Hello and welcome. You are listening to Gay with God, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Are we still searching? The stories you hear in this podcast will melt your heart and can strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with God. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, and I hope that I have you here for quite a while because we are streaming from not only Guatemala with my dear friend Jeremy, but I am at the beloved Corgi Haven Lane in the middle of a snowstorm. So we have blessed the Wi-Fi and the computer, and we're feeling very centered and ready to have this conversation. So I just want to continue to thank you guys for downloading the podcast, sharing the podcast, and I'm also extremely thankful for Jeremy to come on as a guest at the last minute because I've been wanting to get him here, and I finally found him not doing anything else. So I got him on the podcast. So Jeremy, thank you so much for coming, and tell everybody in the Gay with God community a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had the privilege of knowing Midge since I was a little kid. My mom and future stepdad worked with Sue for a while, and we got the pleasure of meeting you and knowing you. And so Midge has been a huge part of my life for a very long time, and I'm very grateful for her and grateful for you having me on your show today.
Oh, you are so welcome. It has been a
long time coming. I grew up in rural North Carolina in Asheboro. And I consider myself a recovering Baptist at this point. I was a couple of problems along the way with a couple of Baptist churches there in Asheboro, but we've healed from those, and life is good.
Life is good. And you're in Guatemala, which is I just love that you went to Guatemala. That was something that you were passionate about, and you just never said no to all the naysayers. And I was so proud of you. You just kept going and you made it happen. So, and I'm looking at a beautiful, beautiful home right now in Guatemala. So awesome. So that's wonderful.
Yes. The first time I came here, I made myself a promise that I would come back as often as possible and stay as long as possible each time. And I ended up having the honor and privilege of being locked down here during COVID, and I did go back to the States a few times in 2021 to work, but I still fulfill that promise for myself to be in this paradise, this heaven that it's one of the most beautiful lakes in the world.
It is
surrounded
gorgeous
by volcanoes. I have to pinch myself every morning when I wake up to live here and be here.
Yeah. If anybody needs to be centered, this is the place to go. This is the place to go.
This place truly did change my life and my perspective on a lot of things. Getting here the first time was a journey, and it's something I almost cheated myself out of a few times. So it's been a life-changing experience to be here and eventually to live here.
Yeah, that is awesome, honey. I'm so happy for you. So happy for you. So let's go ahead.
We have to get you down here.
Oh well, I would love that. And that will be another journey. So we'll see how we can figure that out. I said I would love that, and we'll see how we can make that happen one day. So as long as we have Wi-Fi, let's get right into it, because I know that we're stuttering a little bit to our ears. Hopefully not to anybody else's, but so tell us your coming out faith journey story, wherever you want to start. Go ahead.
I think coming out has been a lifelong process and still continues to be so. When you meet new people, and when they eventually learn this aspect about who I am, it's sometimes I felt I found most of these conversations in my life have been very positive. There were a few in the very beginning that were kind of rough. It was a rough start. The first family member I ever came out to was my twin sister, and it went so horribly wrong that I think it was another 6 or 7 years before I ever had the conversation with my mom.
Oh, wow.
So that was tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think that when family, especially, brothers and sisters, can't embrace that information, it's tough. But I'm wondering, with being a twin, we always hear how connected you guys are, and how twins know stuff and have deep feelings. Did your sister ever have an inkling? Did she ever, or was it a total shock to her?
It was a shock. In fact, I'll never forget the words she said. We were up in the mountains at my stepbrother's wedding rehearsal dinner, and I told her after that dinner that night, and she looked at me. She said, "Well, that's the last thing I ever expected you to tell me." And we burst into tears and kind of separated our ways that night. And it was a really tough moment. Yeah, it was. I thought she would have known, but she didn't.
Yeah. And has that relationship been repaired at all?
Somewhat, yes. She's, I think, still got a long way to go in her acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hate that, because I know that you guys were always close when you were little. At least it seemed to be, from the outside looking in, but no one ever knows what really happens behind closed doors. But and I hate that. And I know that you were terrified to tell your mother. We talked about that many times, about you coming out to your mom. And it was just such a hard journey for you. What was the biggest fear with that, coming out to your mom?
Losing her. I don't know why that was even. It's not a rational fear. It's just a fear that I had about going through that process, and and her being it. But you and I had a conversation in Walmart in Asheboro one time when I was in college. Instinctively, that moms always know, and I specifically asked you if does she have a clue, and you indicated that she had asked a few questions along the way. So she continued to ask questions, and she's friends with a lot of other couples who have children in our community, and so she's built a nice network of support for herself.
That's good. Yeah. And I think, I don't know how much it might have helped or hurt, but it took me a while to come out to myself. So when she knew me and Sue, and it was always Midge and Sue, once I moved to Asheboro, but it wasn't Midge and Sue always together in the beginning,
right?
Yeah, when she knew me. But I think her knowing so many of us from Randolph County Mental Health, it was like a plethora of children there that
yes,
that were in various coming out stages.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She had plenty of practice.
That's right.
We went through it together.
If you need tolerance, baby, and it's so funny that I went to Berkshire Christian College in Massachusetts, and now that I'm out of there, all of these people, a guy I dated included, we were all gay. Not every person at Berkshire Christian College, but there was a lot of us. Now that we're out and we're, in our adult lives and really settled, it's amazing how many of us were gay. And I'm just amazed. The thing is, though, that like when you talk about coming through the Baptist church and getting wounded, how that can change the trajectory of what we do with our life. Because when I started out, I really did feel called to a ministry. I felt called to even, mission work, or at one point I was going to be a nun, but I was told by my grandfather I'd go to hell because Catholics are going to hell. So I'm like, oh, well, that's new. But I wonder if I would have.
I just wonder.
Say that again, Jeremy. You're muted, hon.
Oh, I said, I just wonder who all who's driving the bus for all of us who are going to hell at this
I know,
point?
right? That's a very good question. But what would our paths have been if we had been able to stay in the church and felt supported and affirmed from the church's perspective? How many of us would have gone into direct ministry? I feel like I've always been in ministry with the counseling I've done. I see that as a ministry, but that is not what the path was going to be for me that I thought it was going to be. I could have been wrong, but it's interesting. So do you ever think about if you had stayed in the church and been embraced by the church, would your life have been any different? Did you have goals or aspirations that the church squashed for you?
I think so. I think, you and I both have this inner calling to be some kind of spiritual leader. And, and the spiritual leaders that I experienced in the church were never people I aspired to be. I saw them hurt people, and it was just, I knew there was something I wanted to be. I just knew it wasn't that. And I finally did have an amazing minister after I graduated from college and moved to Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. I had a beautiful lesbian minister who was, she was the first spiritual leader, I'd ever been affiliated with. And I learned a lot from her, and I continue to do so. And I think it's an interesting, I've never thought about being a minister in the church, but leaning into what a spiritual leader or advisor or a wayshower is. Being a wayshower is one of the many spiritual gifts of the people in our community, in the LGBTQ community, and it's an honor. It's an honorable gift to have, and to at least attempt to try to fulfill. It's an ongoing journey.
It is, because the word hypocrisy comes into my vocabulary when I think of it for myself, that I struggled so much to own my sexuality, but I also struggled with my relationship with God, and never quite understanding how it could all work and why there was so much condemnation towards certain individuals or certain groups. And so now that I feel like I'm right in the precipice of having my spiritual not awakening, but that it's all coming together. I've been able to get myself, back into the church, back into a speaking relationship with God, trying to blend all my doubts and fears, and then I feel like a hypocrite because, I'm not all there. But I talked to Mother Julie the other day, and she said, well, why do you think you're supposed to be there? I said, well,
where is there?
Where is there? And and it was a beautiful question, because I put a lot of pressure on myself to do that, if I'm going to lead, then I need to know what the heck I'm talking about. And I still have so many questions and doubts, but apparently, according to Mother Julie and many other people I've talked to, I don't have to be perfect. Go figure. Really?
What? Shocking.
That's heresy. But I think doing what you do and providing a safe space for people to ask questions and to be authentic. It is perfect in its own way. Yeah.
You've always had a gift of being able to do that.
Ah, thank you, sweetie. I appreciate that. And see, I think you're gifted too. And that's why I asked that question about, would you have done something different? Because, I think that inclination that you have to be a listener and to be, you're so gentle when someone's talking to you. You're thoughtful and you're gentle, and you have this aura about you, although I can't see auras, but that would be so cool if I could. You have this feeling of the aura around you that is peaceful and gentle and kind. And that's welcoming. When you're talking about, leading and being a spiritual person, that's so welcoming. People are drawn to you in a way that invites the conversation, and there's no judgment. And so that's just perfect. So in this coming out faith journey story, where do you land with that? Like, you've got the beginning of I'm in church, and did you buy into the church in the beginning when you were little because that's what everybody was saying was right? I mean, how much did you
Oh, of
have a
course.
relationship with God? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of based, avoiding hellfire at the end of this life.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
but and
Yeah.
I think we all have this innate ability to be with God and communicate with
Mhm.
our creator with or
Mhm.
without the assistance of other people. Sometimes we
Mhm.
do need um, assistance in teaching and learning of how to do it properly, and in a way that honors yourself and and
Mhm.
God.
Mhm.
So yeah, we do have to learn how to do that at some point, but it's not always required. You don't need
Mhm.
another being or presence to provide that connection. And
Mhm.
a lot of times we were taught that it is. As I began my figuring out that I think I've always known that I was attracted to men,
Mhm.
but I never associated that with being gay as a child, because that meant going to hell and who knows what else, and it was a
Mhm.
message that you received from church, from school, from Boy Scouts, from family, from friends. It was never ending, this negative connotation about
Mhm.
what I think I am is this horrible thing.
Mhm.
And when I began college, and I was surrounded by people who were affirming and warm, and and accepting and affirming toward gay and lesbian people, and trans people. It was eye-opening. I'd never had
Mhm.
that in my life, and it really fostered an environment to be able to accept who I am, and eventually start talking about it with people who I know would be okay with it, and would hug me and gently lead me along the way. It was definitely life-changing.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
at that point in time, I had joined a very conservative Christian group in college, and I gave a couple of them a chance to come out to them, and some of them conversations went well, some of them didn't, and I just kind of faded away from that group without giving a
Mhm.
lot of them the chance to accept me or not. It's just something that I didn't want to go through at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you get a glimmer of what it can be, and you can see from people who can embrace you, then going back is hard.
Right.
Because then you get in that conflict of why am I going to take the abuse? I can't change their
Mhm.
mind, not at that time. And I think
Absolutely.
minds have changed a lot more over time, but there's still some sticky wickets out there. And
Of
even with the
course.
political basis, it's like we have rights, we don't have rights, and it just depends on who's in the office. Um,
Yeah.
so we're not there yet. We're not there yet, and I don't believe yet that all churches will maybe understand that before a very long time, because they're entrenched in their own
Yeah.
fear of
It's
hellfire, and they don't know how to embrace us and embrace the
mhm.
knowledge they were given, whether it was right or wrong, which we now believe is more wrong than right. But they can't switch
Right.
that in their brain to be accepting of us and still think they're free from hellfire.
Right.
Yeah. So when you think of God now, what kind of
Hmm.
image or of God do you have?
Um, I feel like I experience God every time I look at this beautiful lake. There's
Mm-hmm.
no other, you know, way of creation, other than something beyond us that was able
Yes.
to do this.
Yeah.
This lake used to be a super volcano that exploded 80,000 years ago and created a crater lake, and the destruction um, was unimaginable. There was smoke that reached all the way to the United States. That's how big this thing was. And so I don't know, like I've heard people call this place the belly button of the earth, and I feel very nourished and loved living in the belly button of the earth.
I love that term. I love that. Oh, wow. Well, I agree with you. I agree with you that I could never put rocks clacking together to create all of this. The Big Bang Theory never really set well with me. But I speak often on this podcast about how the God of our understanding, whoever he or she may be, I have a problem with the beginning and the end. Like, okay, so you have the chicken and you have the egg. That's great. So what came first, the egg, and then here comes the chicken, or did we get the chicken created and then the eggs keep them going? So then who are God's people?
Right.
And I know I still sound
Exactly.
4 years old, but 4 or 5 or however old it was. But I would love to know, but I don't think I need to know in the same way that I used to need to know.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with the 4-year-old mentality. I have a good friend who encourages people to live their lives as if they're 4.
I'm there every day. Tell your friend that I have embraced my inner child.
It's very important.
Yes, I find her quite amusing and just delightful, and other people don't understand her.
Which is fine.
It's all fine. So how do you, I know that just being in that place, you can feel nurtured, but how do you nurture that relationship with God now, where before it was like, you have to be in church and you have to read the scriptures and you have to not sin and da. So what is that relationship like with you and God now, and how do you nurture it?
For me, it's finding ways to connect, whether it be a walk through the mountains here, or through fire. We have many beautiful ways to connect, and figuring out what is the best way for you to do that is I think an individual one that we each have.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said that, because our faith journeys can't be the same because we're so
Absolutely.
different. So, someone challenged me one time that I used the title for this podcast was Gay with God. And they said, don't you think that's limiting? Not everybody believes in a God. And I said, well, I couldn't say the word God for a long time because I had such a negative connotation. And so part of my empowerment journey was to be able to not fear that word and to not have such a repulsive feeling. I mean, just a visceral feeling against that word. And as I came through that journey of reclaiming that word, not that I have to use it every time, because I really liked using creator of all that is because it fit me. But I just didn't want that to be a block for me. And so I decided Gay with God had to be the podcast, because, Gay with creator of all that is really lengthy. Plus, it was like an affirming for me. It was an affirmation that I could finally say the word and not feel like puking or getting angry. And so it is a journey.
That's another important aspect of our journey, is to look at the fears and the disgusts that we have, and explore that. Like, why do I feel this way about this thing, and dive into that, and on some level achieve peace with it.
Yeah
because the truth is, God is not, it's just a label for this thing. It doesn't matter what we call it, him or her. It's just, they're all labels. Yes.
And they're labels that were given, I think, by, I know that Jesus referred to God the Father, but we're also learning, and if you ever, Richard Rohr is an amazing bishop and spiritual leader, and he talks a lot about the mother image of God and the creation, and how that the mother part of God is not well known because it was a man's world back in the day, still is, and in
many ways, yes.
Many ways. but that image of God, now that I've opened and expanded that to include a mother image, has just been very healing for me. And so now I'll often say, I'll pray to Mother, Father God, and just be inclusive, because maybe we should start calling God they. It's been talked about to not necessarily put a label on God as a male or female, but I do love the energy of I love the energy of the moon, and I love the energy of Mother Earth. And when I think about Mother Earth being created by a Mother, Father God, that just makes sense to me, So
of course.
So I like that we just all blend, where we've come from and where we're going, and we can keep it individualized, that we don't have to do it like anybody else. Although they try to put us in the cliques of the church and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't have to be that way.
It does not.
Yeah,
it's interesting. There are a lot of Catholic churches here from when the Spanish invaded and colonized this area. I'll go and visit them because they're beautiful places. And when I'm there, you'll see people just scooting up and down the aisle on their knees, and they just create this suffering for themselves, and you can only assume why they're doing this. I don't know, like there is a lot of suffering that's represented in the church for me.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate too, because the community, what I love about it is the community, and that you have people that are supporting, if you get in the right situation, of course, but you have people that will support you on your faith journey, and that can be there as an ally to you. And not just if you're gay, but just as a person, whether you're gay or straight or trans, or that you would be supported in your questions and your doubts and your fears. And I had tried several churches before and had been totally, it wasn't a good experience after I'd it just wasn't. And so then when I finally found the Episcopal Church by accident, and I'd lived in this town, for so long in Asheboro, and I remember as a school counselor, I would have like a really bad day, and I remembered where that church was, and it's kind of in a little valley. It's all by itself, and it's got a creek running by it. And it's just a beautiful little church off of Mountain Road. And I would go I would go home that way, and I would go and get in the parking lot and just park my car and sit there and de-escalate for a while. Wow. And I just felt comforted by just being in that, I love nature anyway, but it was a very natural, but it wasn't oppressive feeling for me.
Right.
And then we were looking for the LGBTQ meetup to have a place to be that was free. And I met Father Joe and was able to have a conversation with him, and realized that, much to my great surprise, friends of mine went to that church. And I'm like, you're doing what? Why would you go to because that just the Episcopal name made me think of just such a straight and narrow, unyielding kind of thing. But the Episcopal Church went through similar to what the Methodist Church is going through now. They went through a big break over the LGBT community. And this particular church came out the other side and was able to embrace, that community in our community. So, yeah. So I'm not saying every person in that building believes that it's okay for me to be gay, but I'm very gay when I'm there. From day one, I made sure everybody knew that I was gay. And if you were going to have a problem, you better show it to my face right now, because I'll be out the door, and I'm fine with that.
Absolutely. Been there, done that before.
Yeah, I'm just going to push it in your face, and then you got to react, and then I'll know who you are. And, but man, I just have such a network of people who are pulling for me and wanting me to do well and wanting me to grow and giving me lots of opportunities to serve. And I just love it. Still scared of it a little bit. You always wait for that other shoe to maybe fall because it's going really good.
No, on some level, you have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Otherwise, we're not growing.
Ooh. Comfortable being uncomfortable. Uh-huh. Jeremy just uh-huh.
It's a scary place.
Yeah. It is a scary place, but I totally agree with you that if we're too comfortable for too long, you're right, the growth stops and then we wither. We have to keep nurturing that place in us where we're called to be more. Yeah, I've always said that as long as I'm breathing and above ground, there's a reason for me.
Yes, living a purposeful life is something that it's a concept I never got from the church or growing up. It's something I didn't really explore until my late 30s. And, just continuing to move closer into that for yourself is, I think, why each of us are here.
Yeah. And I also feel, I'll ask you this question. Do you feel that we're here only to move ourselves through this purposeful life, or are we here to come together and do it? I mean, not necessarily live other people's lives, but do you think as a community, we all have to be going in that direction?
Definitely. We are, it's fine to focus on yourself, and which also goes against a lot of particularly Christian teachings, is where I was taught that it's very selfish to do so. But making sure that your cup is full is the only way to pour out for other people. I mean, if we live a life where we're always depleted, we have so much less to give. So it is important to have the biggest impact you have for others, and we can't help people who don't want to be helped. But if someone's asking for our assistance, I think we do have an obligation to help them the best that we know how.
Yeah, I agree with you, because we can't just be there by ourselves. I mean,
No.
the journey, if that was a solo journey, then it would be because we're the only person on the planet and we were just put here to do our own thing. But I agree with you that that it isn't selfish to focus on you and to get yourself right. I think that's, even though some of the Christian churches teach that, the Bible doesn't teach that, because, get the log out of your eye, the splinter out of your log, the log and the splinter. And what that says to me is that I need to make sure that I am in a space where I am right with God, and that I'm in a space of love and kindness and giving, and then I can help someone else. As well as giving myself grace.
I think certain points in time it can feel out of balance, that I'm focusing too much on myself, or I'm feeling depleted. But I think over time, as it does balance itself out, and just keeping kind of a check on that, finding balance for ourselves and helping other people find their balance it's a fun thing to do.
Yeah. Well, community is always better than being alone, I think, even though we need that solace, and we need to have meditation time, and we need to have time, building up our own relationship with God. Then doing it in community makes it all the sweeter, because we're all in the same place, at one point. So yeah. So tell us, the listeners, and tell us, how are you serving now? What lights you up now in the way of service and giving back to the community? Because I know, you've been gifted by so many things in your journey, and it's like me. It's like I'm a professional hummingbird. I'm over here, and then they go, oh look, I can serve over here. Oh look. So
I have a former boss who called me a hummingbird because I was probably undiagnosed ADHD. And then after she fired me, I started reading a book, and the opening page starts talking about the hummingbird and how, physically speaking, the hummingbird should not be able to fly. It just it's not designed that way, but the thing is, no one ever told the hummingbird. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, at that point I knew I was on the right track, and that termination of employment was the biggest gift that anyone could have given me.
That's right. That's right. Wayne Dyer said one time to a radio station, he walked in to do an interview, and it was a talk radio station. And he walked in and everybody was like so depressed. And he was just overwhelmed with the depression in the office. And he's like, what's going on? Everybody seems, and he had been there before. So he saw the difference. And someone said, well, we're moving, we got bought out. And instead of being a talk radio station, we're going to, change the format. We're not going to be talk radio anymore. It's going to be just music. And and so he goes, oh, he says, well, I'm glad I'm here today then, to get my talk in. And then he said somebody else was like really, really depressed. And so he went to talk to that person, and he goes, well, I just want to congratulate you. And the person says, what? I just got fired. I'm fired. I have nowhere to go. And he goes, well, congratulations. Why are you telling me congratulations? He says, because you can't go where you're supposed to go unless you got fired. He said, apparently there's something else out there for you and you need to go do it. So congratulations. And he says later, like a year later, he ran into some of these people, and somebody had written a book. Someone else started some sort of a, shaman thing. And there was all of these things that people did that they never would have done because they were hanging on to that job. So you got fired, and then you did what?
Oh Lord, I struggled for a very long time.
Okay.
But I started, I said a prayer one day. I knew I needed direction, and I was walking my little dog, and I looked up to the sky. I'm like, I need direction. And at that point in time, the direction came in the form of working with a life coach, who opened so many doors. It was such a scary investment. I had never spent so much money on myself, especially at a time right after losing my job. And financially it made 0 sense whatsoever. And I got connected with healers of different sorts. Just the number of connections that opened up for me, the ability to come to this magnificent place where I live now, came out of that process. It's just been such a beautiful journey. Asking for direction, and then when the direction comes, taking the responsibility to realizing it and accepting it, as scary as it is for me, was truly life-changing. One of the things one of the people I connected with was, it sounds kind of woo-woo, but she reads people's palms. I had to print my palm print and mail it to her. And she comes back, with this multi-page report of, what is in my hand, my lifeline. The term spiritual leader of inner peace came up, and I was like, well, what does that mean? How do I find that for myself, and how do I help other people do that?
Yeah.
And we all have different tools along the way that we use, and sometimes we outgrow those things and don't do them anymore. But once in a while, the opportunity comes up to reconnect with those modalities, and it's been fun to learn new ways of helping myself and other people along the way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story. And I think you're right that, you being a spiritual leader of inner peace, I mean, that goes back to what I said earlier in the podcast, is that you just radiate that, whether you do it formally and you have a shingle that you put out and say, hey, I'm a spiritual leader of inner peace. Come on in. I mean, but
I haven't used that term in a long time, actually.
But it's awesome. That's awesome that's what you radiate, that is your path, whether you do it professionally or whether you do it because that's who you are on this planet. And that's awesome. Yeah. So what would you tell other people that, like, if they're searching and they're trying to figure out, how do I go from here to there? How do I make this authentic life of mine where I radiate that I'm gay or, trans or whatever I identify with, but how do I take that and and go against all the teachings of the church? What would you, from your experience and what happened with your sister and all of that, what would you say to that person?
One of the most important mantras that I learned along the way was learning, knowing, and hearing and believing that you are perfectly on your path. It's not life is not a destination, it's a journey, and where you are right now is all that matters at this moment in time. And it's perfectly fine, and I think we have a responsibility to kind of have an idea of where we want to go and how to get there. But being flexible with the path, losing a job and going through these seemingly horrific events are scary, but they truly do open the pathway to where we are supposed to go. And being open, and a lot of times we let these events devastate ourselves, and whether it be a death of a loved one or anything that comes along the way, learning how to gracefully move through this, and whatever feelings come up, allowing yourself to do that, but not letting it halt or slow down from doing what you want to do and being who you're supposed to be.
Even when you don't know what that is.
So knowing that you're perfectly on your path. Yeah, it's perfectly fine not to know. I mean, when I was searching for I knew after I got fired from that hotel job that I would never work for another corporate entity in the way that I had for so long. And I knew and studied, and there were a bunch of no's that came before my yeses. And so, when an opportunity that comes up that is a hell yes for you, make sure you take that opportunity. It's very easy to know your no's and feel and understand your yeses, and then taking that step to pursue your yes is very important.
Yeah. What did you learn in the worst no that you ever got? What was the lesson that you learned from that?
I don't think there were any worse. I don't think there were any. They were all pretty gentle no's.
Okay.
I explored going back to graduate school to go further into social work and therapy. But the big no for me was the red tape and bureaucracy that goes along with that. That was a big no for me. I looked at massage therapy, which is a beautiful modality, but it was a no for me at that time. And it can be gentle, or it can be a slap in the face sometimes.
Yeah.
For me, the yeses were much more scary because that required stepping into that. When the yeses did begin showing up, that was the scary part for me, was going into these things that go against, everything everyone always said that I should be doing.
Right.
They just don't make sense.
Yeah. Like you talked about investing lots of money into a path that felt like a hell yes. And everybody in your world at that time, because we talked about it was like everybody thinks this is a really bad idea.
Are you crazy? Yes, probably.
Well, I'll
learning
never
to be okay being called crazy is a big lesson.
That's right, because it's just a word and it's coming out of someone else's fears. That's the thing, is that when we get a hell yes and we step into it, everybody else is trying to protect us from their fears of what's going to happen to us, instead of sending that energy of love and excitement and positivity to us. They're all locked in their fears and they want to shut it down. I've actually lost friends over going back to church. It's so funny. I lost friends because I was trying to be gay in church, and then I left church and did my own thing, and then when I went back to church, now I'm too Christian, as if I wasn't. And I'm sitting with that. I said, okay. And it's not a thing where it's, been like, it's not abusive. Nobody's been abusive about that.
Right.
But I can tell the shift in people that I've been around, and now they're they're like going to the sidelines. They're like, okay, we'll still kind of be in the big circle, but we can't be in your inner circle anymore because I'm apparently saying too many God things.
Oh no.
So it's an interesting twist, really, that you can't. Back in the day, I couldn't be gay, and today, I'm not always embraced with being in a relationship with God, but I'm okay with it in a way that I wouldn't have been probably before. And I understand it. I understand where I was when I couldn't say the word God, and where I was when I was trying to get myself back and to sit in a pew, because I could not go in there and sit down for the longest time. I was glad they were having mass on the grass at the Episcopal Church when I first started, because it felt like I was just at a campground, So I was like, hey, I'll just sit out here at a campground. But I didn't want to go in the building. But it's funny
one
how
step at a time.
That's right, one step at a time. So I appreciate the fact that if someone's listening to this and your friends are going through their own journey, to identify what are your fears, like you said earlier. Why do I feel that way? So is it about me that I'm fearing for you? Am I imposing my fears on you instead of congratulating you and supporting you and being happy for you? I love that you said that we need to really dig into the fears and the disgust and find out where that's coming from for us, because we will put that onto another person when really those feelings are there for us to step up to a different level
very quickly. And it's important to not take those things personally when people are projecting those fears on you, and because we do allow that stuff to stop us from where we want to go, and it's, and then learn how to take it personally when this fear or anger comes up from, what the hell is Midge doing going back to church? Why am I feeling this way?
That's right. I'm not feeling this way. Why does that bother me so much? Well, and I think we put each other in boxes so much. It's like we expect you to be this, and it's hard to take you out of that box and allow you to spread your wings, because this is how we know you. This is how we met you. Now stay in the box, dang it.
You're not allowed to change.
That's right. Don't change and grow. Get those butterfly wings off of you, boy. Who do you think you are? Oh my God, I love talking to you. I love it so much.
It's been a long time.
I know it has been, but you're well, and you're out of. So, what is COVID like in Guatemala? Is there a big problem with that there too?
It's kind of hard to tell at this point. A lot of the villages stopped reporting it because they weren't getting any assistance by reporting the numbers. In fact, they're being hurt more because they were being forced to shut down and do things they didn't want to do. So a lot of the villages are reporting. I think, like everyone else, this new variant seems to be more easily transmitted. I did hear of a couple of people here in our village who contracted it this week, but I think they always go back and forth here, but the Guatemalan government is at this point in time saying that they're going to restrict travel to here unless you've had a vaccine. So we'll see if that actually plays out or not.
Are you still allowed to leave and come back, or?
Yeah, I've actually in 2021 I went back to the US 3 times for 4 different work contracts. So I've been back and forth quite a number of times this past year.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's not as easy as it used to be, but it's doable.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for giving us your wisdom and your light, and it's just, I can feel it through Zoom. I can feel it. And I'm thankful
Thank you.
to all of the gods who came together from whatever genre to keep our Zoom going today.
Yes.
Yes, this was a big gift and we appreciate it. So Jeremy, are there places that people can connect with you if they want to hear more about spirituality or inner peace or anything else you're doing on social media? Where could people
Yes, I'm
find
on
you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, where I think that's pretty much all I do at this point.
Okay.
But I don't even remember my Instagram. Let me look it up.
Well,
It's been so long since I looked at
you
my
don't have to look it up. You're going to send it to
I'll
me.
send it to you.
You'll send it to
Yes.
me, and then I will post it on the show page.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So you can connect
I will
with
send
Jeremy.
that today.
He will send it today.
Yes. I will do that. I have
Yes, you will.
homework for the first
You
time in
have
a long time.
That's right. And I may not fire you or kick you out, but you will always be in my life, Jeremy, always. So I want to thank you honestly for honoring us with your faith journey story. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And I want to thank my listeners for coming back each week, supporting, sharing, and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to see more information and links to connect with Jeremy, check back later today with the Gay with God show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. If you are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you are authentically gay, God has always been within you, even when you didn't know it. You have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Stay tuned to hear how you can join the Gay with God community and check us out on the Facebook group, Gay with God. See you next week. Bye, everybody.
I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.